Hello everyone, welcome to ET Studios, and today we're having a look at the i3 2100 and 2120 by extension. And in this particular case I'm testing the 2120, but I really think that you'll have similar results no matter what. This is a 2-core 4-threaded CPU running at 3.3 GHz or 3.1 in the 2100's case, and it was made about 10 years ago now, and Intel's really come a long way in certain aspects, not as far in others, but it's definitely a bit of an older CPU, and I wanted to have a look and see if it's still a usable one in 2020. So I had a look and did some basic office tasks. This has been running as an office computer for the last 3 years or so, and it's got 8 gigabytes of RAM in the system, and up until recently didn't have a graphics card. For some of the tests I did have to use a graphics card because the integrated graphics on this old i3 do leave a little bit to be desired, and I do think that if you're planning on doing any gaming whatsoever, you'll definitely want to invest in some sort of dedicated graphics card. But for some tests, I did Cinebench R15 and R20, I'll leave the results on there. It wasn't amazingly fast, of course, but it did beat out like a 3rd gen laptop i5 or something like that, so it was not the greatest, very low on the charts, but it was okay. Then we have I did a bit of gaming test with Kerbal Space Program, and what I did is I ran the game with no mods, then a very lightly modded game with just some part mods and things like that, and then I ran a fairly heavy modded game with Realism Overhaul and all of that. It took a very long time to load into the world when it had Realism Overhaul on, but it ran Realism Overhaul. You really have to leave it, and if you do touch it, it crashes, but once it's loaded in, it was playable. It was around 18 FPS, between 15 and 18 FPS, and I was a little bit worried about there being a GPU bottleneck because I'm only running an RX 460 in the system, but then when I checked Task Manager afterwards, both the GPU and the CPU were only running at around 50%, and you may think, well, isn't that a bottleneck somewhere else? But no, I think it's probably the CPU still not managing to quite catch up with the GPU, and therefore the GPU is being pulled down because the CPU won't show 100% usage in certain cases. So I do think that the CPU is probably the limiting factor, and it did get better and better the less mods were in the game. So the vanilla playthrough was perfectly fine. I've been playing a little bit of science mode, and that was fine. Otherwise, the Realism Overhaul, I did a quick mission up to space with a Falcon 9 replica, and there's quite a few parts in there. There's not a crazy amount. I wouldn't recommend doing anything too crazy on Kerbal Space Program if you are planning to play that. But I think other games, I think if you're trying to play games like CSGO and some esports titles that are a little bit older, you'll be perfectly fine. Just make sure you have a dedicated graphics card, like I said, because the integrated graphics on systems this old are not very good. So definitely get some dedicated graphics card of whatever type that you can afford. I do highly recommend at least 4 gigs, but preferably 8 gigabytes of RAM, and an SSD is just a lifesaver in any sort of scenario in 2020. Other than that, the CPU was perfectly good for standard office tasks like Microsoft Word and Excel and stuff like that, and your normal web browsing, it's going to do just fine. So if this is a PC that you're trying to build as an office computer, I highly recommend it, actually. It's a really good CPU, considering you can get it super cheap on eBay nowadays. I'll leave some links in the description so you guys can have a look at how cheap you can get these nowadays. But it's on the really old LGA1155 socket, so you can get motherboards for them pretty much everywhere, even brand new off places like AliExpress and things like that. So I think that this CPU is pretty good for office tasks, and for a very budget gaming CPU, for some light games with a decent graphics card paired with it, I do think that it is probably a decent deal. So yeah, if you have any questions, I do have the system and probably have it for a while, so if you would like to ask me anything in the comments below, or in the Discord server in the description below, you can do that. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.